What's going on, everybody? It's the Fantasy Football Almanac here, back at it with another fantasy football video. With free agency right around the corner, just wanted to hop on, discuss some potential free agents, some trades that could happen on March 15th when free agency finally starts. There is a lot of controversy going on right now between Lamar, Aaron Rodgers, DeAndre Hopkins, a lot of great players that could be on the move. But before we get into it, if you guys could, go down and give this video a like. I'm answering every single comment. You guys have any sleepers, breakouts, you want to let me know down below in the comments, please do it. And subscribe to the channel, turn that notification bell on so you don't miss another video. But with that, guys, let's hop right into it, starting with the quarterbacks. I would say the number one and the number two most talked about quarterback by far are Aaron Rodgers and Lamar Jackson. And I know technically Aaron Rodgers is not a free agent, but the amount of buzz going on about him potentially moving teams is too much for me to ignore. I would say there's three main destinations for Aaron Rodgers, the first of which is remaining on the Packers. Well, I think the organization wants to give Jordan Love a chance to shine. How can you pass up a three-time MVP, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, debatably a top 5 quarterback of all time, staying on your roster, especially when you do have guys like Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs, and potentially the ability to draft another great wide receiver this offseason? I think it's entirely possible Aaron Rodgers stays. Well, I wouldn't rank it as the most likely outcome. I do think it's more than possible. We've been through this song and dance with Aaron Rodgers before, where he's like, oh, I'm gonna go somewhere else. I'm gonna go get traded, and then he doesn't end up following through with it. Could be the same thing here. The last two destinations I do think are pretty equally likely, being the Jets and the Raiders, but I do think the Jets are a little bit more likely, despite Vegas thinking the Raiders are a little bit more likely. And the reason why I think that is the case is because I just think the Jets have a better team. Sure, the Raiders have Davante Adams, a wide receiver he's loved for years, and Davante Adams also would definitely love to have Aaron Rodgers back. But at the same time, the Jets defense showed it was a top 10 unit out there. Furthermore, I mean, they also have Garrett Wilson, a future top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. Could honestly become a top 3 wide receiver. That's how good he looked his rookie year, despite terrible quarterback play. With a good quarterback in there, I think he could be great. We also have Elijah Moore, a decent O-line, at least decent head coaches, and Nathaniel Hackett there. I think the odds that Rodgers go there are higher than 0, that's for sure. And I think the Raiders, I could also see him going there because, I mean, their offense is pretty good. They have, great running backs, Davante Adams, Hunter Renfrow. I could see it either way, but I do lean the Jets, and I think the Jets are his number one destination. That's my first prediction. Lamar Jackson is the second guy I want to talk about, and to me, there's one team that really sticks out. And while the Ravens did use their franchise tag on Lamar Jackson, I don't see Lamar Jackson feeling comfortable getting paid less than a guy like Daniel Jones. I mean, I just don't see it. I think Lamar wants to go out and get that bag. I don't necessarily know if the Ravens are offering it to him. So while the Ravens did use their tag on him, my number one destination for Lamar Jackson is the Washington Commanders. I think the Washington Commanders are absolutely in play to go get Lamar Jackson. For one, this is a team that is a quarterback away from legitimately competing. I mean, the rest of their roster is great. I think they have one of the most underrated wide receiving cores in the entire league. They just pick up Bieniemy from the Chiefs, which I think was a huge player from an offensive play calling standpoint. This is a team that went from being in the worst division in the league to arguably the best division in the entire league, and they need to compete. And the best way they're going to do that is by bringing in a top 10 quarterback in Lamar Jackson. That's why my main prediction, I think Lamar Jackson is going to be a Commander. And I think it is honestly by far the most likely outcome, although there are a few other teams. I think he could end up staying with the Ravens, depending on what he's offered in free agency. Maybe he's not offered what he likes and decides to stay with what he's comfortable with. After all, he is 45-16 all time with Harbaugh. But the other team I could see him going to is the Panthers. The Panthers always seem to be in need for a quarterback, and Lamar Jackson would fit the bill. Back when they had Mr. Matt Rule, one of the worst head coaches I've seen to run an organization, besides Nathaniel Hackett, but that's another story. I honestly think the Panthers do need a quarterback, and they're always in play for one. They do have a sneaky good defense, and their offense, well, it's not great. It's fine. It'll be okay. I could see Lamar Jackson go to the Panthers as well. But again, my number one prediction is the Commanders. The last two quarterbacks I want to talk about, I'll group them together because I think they are kind of in the same basket of players. I'm talking about Jimmy Garoppolo and Jakobi Brissett. Both of these guys are decent patchwork starters, not somebody you're going to want for really the long term. And I mean, guys that could carry you to a Super Bowl with a great team around them, but not somebody who is going to will you to a Super Bowl. I think both of these guys could end up on teams that just need a stopgap QB. Like, I honestly think Jimmy Garoppolo, to me, just fits as a Buccaneer. They need a safe quarterback who's not going to turn the ball over that much. And in 10 games last year, Jimmy G threw 4 turnovers. So I think Jimmy G's a fine option to go to the Buccaneers. Plus, I mean, their team still is pretty good. I mean, you have Mike Evans, you have Chris Godwin. You still have a pretty good line despite letting Donovan Smith walk. And that defense is still, I mean, at least fine. If you get a quarterback in there that's not going to turn the ball over, I think our team could still be decent. But if I were the Bucs personally, I would just commit to the tank. The other destinations I see for them, honestly, the Raiders I see as a good fit, and the Jets. For both of these guys, I think the Raiders and Jets make a ton of sense. And then the only other team I could really think of is the Texans. I think the Texans do offer a decent landing spot for a quarterback. I mean, obviously, they could easily take Anthony Richardson, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud at the quarterback position this upcoming offseason, holding the number 2 pick. But at the same time, if they decide, okay, we're just going to load up the defense, because they do have a defensive head coach in DeMeco Ryans. So I think it's possible they just try and load up on defense, although I do see it as unlikely. Just want to throw it out there as a scenario. My prediction, though, is Jimmy G to the Buccaneers and Jakobi Brissett to the Raiders, leaving us with Aaron Rodgers to the Jets, Lamar Jackson to the Commanders, Jimmy G to the Bucs, and Jakobi Brissett to the Raiders. That's how I see it personally. Let me know what you think down below, though. Could be totally wrong. Again, these are just predictions. Let me know down below what you guys think. Next up, we got the running back position. There's 3 main running backs I really want to talk about. There's quite a few landing spots for running backs, but the running back market before Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs got their franchise tag was so saturated. Now I think it's starting to spread out a little bit, and there are quite a few teams in need of a running back that I think could easily go out and get one. The first guy I'll bring up is Miles Sanders, and I think Miles Sanders fits pretty well with 2 teams, namely the Dolphins and the Bills. I think both these teams make a lot of sense, especially because the Bills have been needing a running back, yearning for a running back for years now. I mean, they went out, tried to sign Chase Edmonds, didn't work out. They were in the lottery for CMC, did not work out. They go and draft James Cook. It kind of works out. They don't like Singletary that much. They need a running back. I could easily see the Bills going out and trying to get Miles Sanders. The problem is the price tag. I think Miles Sanders is going to be a little bit more expensive than your average running back. I could see his price tag sitting somewhere around $8 million. But I think for a team that is in need of a good running back and doesn't really need a pass-catching running back, I think the Bills are a really good fit for that. And the Dolphins make sense as well. I think the Dolphins showed through their actions that they really want a running back. And I don't think Jeff Wilson or Raheem Mostert are going to cut it. I mean, they did run them in a committee. I think that if they had a running back they really liked, they would give them the workload, give them the workhorse. I think that's the type of coach McDaniels is. So that's why I do see Miles Sanders landing with either the Dolphins or Bills, and these are teams that want to make a push for a Super Bowl by adding a piece like this. So that's why I think Miles Sanders for those teams. But if I had to pick one, I would lean the Dolphins just because the Bills did just spend a 2nd-round pick on James Cook. Next up, we got Kareem Hunt. I think Kareem Hunt is going to be a really, really cheap running back. I don't think he'll go for much money at all. So that's why I think he'll end up on either the Broncos or the Eagles. But I think if I had to guess, I would go Broncos just because the Broncos are in such dire need of a running back, and Sean Payton loves him some running backs. So I'm going with the Broncos here for Kareem Hunt, signing a 1 or 2 year deal, especially because the situation with Javonte Williams is pretty dicey. I mean, reports coming out that he might not be back till week 8, but then other reports coming out that he's going to be back week 1, week 2. We just don't know. I could see him coming back week 1. I could see him coming back week 6. At the end of the day, we just don't know. So in the meantime, why not sign a stopgap guy, a guy who is a little bit older, but is kind of better than the veteran crop that's out there in Kareem Hunt, and give Russell Wilson someone decent to check down to in the first half of the season before Javonte's back. The other team I could see him landing on is the Eagles, and the Eagles need a cheap option. They're right up against the cap. I think Kareem Hunt's fine for that. I mean, we saw Miles Sanders play well in this offense. We saw Boston Scott play well in this offense. I think their O-line is absolutely spectacular. So any running back really is going to thrive in this offense. I think Kareem Hunt's a cheap option that can last them 1 or 2 years until they go out and draft another running back. Although, fingers crossed, I got the 101 in my Dynasty League. Hope they go Bijan, to be honest. That'd be spectacular. But moving on, we got Alexander Mattison. And I think Alexander Mattison could go to 2 teams in particular. I think the Chiefs and the Falcons are the main 2 teams that could go after him. I know Pacheco looked great in the Super Bowl, but at the end of the day, the draft capital just wasn't there. And I think he could be great, don't get me wrong. I love the guy. I'm rooting for him. But a lot of times when teams have poor draft capital on running backs, no matter how great they are, they decide to move on. I mean, look at James Robinson, Michael Carter, running backs that were great. Elijah Mitchell, running backs that were great, but just didn't have the draft capital, and thus they wanted to move on. Which kind of stinks, but that's why I think Mattison could be a Chief this upcoming season. If not, I could easily see the Falcons. I mean, Arthur Smith loves to run the ball. So I could see Mattison being a Falcon. I think he fits the team well. And although Algier was great, I think they want to run the ball so much that they need more than one running back. And Mattison could be that guy, not too expensive, and could fit the team. If I had to pick between the two, though, I would probably go Falcons. So that means Miles Sanders to the Bills, Kareem Hunt to the Broncos, and Mattison to the Falcons are my predictions. Lastly, we got the wide receivers, and I know DeAndre Hopkins is not a free agent, but he most likely will be traded. It's the same situation as Aaron Rodgers. I think there are 3 teams he could end up on, either the Chiefs, the Giants, or the Patriots. I think all seem pretty equally likely, but if I had to give a nod to one, I honestly, as a Giants fan, I hate to say it, but I would lean towards the Giants. I think the Giants have a good amount of cap space. I mean, $18 million right now, which is pretty decent. I mean, it's 10th most in the entire league. And not only that, I mean, we have no weapons. I think the Giants are going to be a common theme for pretty much all of these wide receivers in here. But I could also equally as likely see the Chiefs. I mean, the Chiefs did just get rid of Tyreek Hill, a younger wide receiver, but they're going to have to give up way less to get DeAndre Hopkins. And DeAndre Hopkins recently came out and said he is willing to renegotiate his contract in order to go to a new team. So, I mean, that's a good sign for all teams who are looking to buy into DeAndre Hopkins. I think the Patriots as well are looking to get a weapon for Mac Jones. And yes, they have Jakobi Meyers, who we'll be talking about in just a second, but I don't think Jakobi Meyers is going to be there for the long term. They haven't really struck iron on a deal. And I think because of that, DeAndre Hopkins to the Patriots could make sense. Although I don't really see it as their type of way to build a team. It would be pretty cool to see, and we would finally get a glimpse of who Mac Jones really is as a quarterback with an elite number 1 wide receiver. The next guy I want to talk about is OBJ. I think OBJ is either Cowboys or Giants, but if I had to go one, I would easily go the Cowboys. I know, former Giant would be a great reunion, but at the same time, I really do think he fits the Cowboys. And the Cowboys do need a wide receiver. It's one of their main weaknesses. I know they did just hire an OC that is very much ground and pound, run the ball. And McCarthy's the same way, very much wants to run the ball, wants to run his own offense. But I think OBJ is a cheap wide receiver that you can bring in and have an immediate impact. Well, it won't be very substantial. It'll be better than what you have in Gallup and Tolbert. The next guy I want to talk about is Jakobi Meyers. I think Jakobi Meyers has 2 main landing spots. I think the Packers are the number 1 landing spot in a way to try and entice Aaron Rodgers to stay. Not spending top tier money on a guy, because Jakobi Meyers wouldn't cost the Packers top tier money, but it is still a great name to bring in. I mean, a multiple time 800-yard wide receiver with Mac Jones. I think Jakobi Meyers is a fine bargaining chip for Aaron Rodgers, and I mean, if I were Aaron Rodgers and I said Jakobi Meyers, well, it wouldn't entirely sway me. I think it is a nice little chip. The other team I think you can go to is the Lions. The Lions actually have exactly $18 million in cap space, the 9th most in the league. And that would be just enough to sign Jakobi Meyers. And I know the Lions have a great wide receiver core already. I mean, we're talking about Jameson Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown. But getting Jakobi Meyers would be really nice, would be the icing on the cake. And they do have 2 first-round picks that they could attack the defense with. So they don't really need to worry about signing as many defensive players. I think the Lions are going to be really good next year. And I think the Jakobi Meyers signing would just be icing on the cake. Then we have Juju Smith-Schuster. I think it's pretty obvious, to be honest. I think Juju's going to remain with the Chiefs, although I could be totally wrong. I just see Juju as a Chief. I think he brought them success, and while I know most of that was Pat Mahomes, I think he brought them a lot of success and was a good enough wide receiver to help them win the Super Bowl. If I were them, I would bring Juju back. I don't think the contract's going to be massive, probably less than Jakobi Meyers, to be honest, maybe around the same. I think that's fine. I don't see why not. But the other team I could throw out there is the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys would be great with Juju Smith. Now the last 2 wide receivers we got DJ Chark and Allen Lazard. I think DJ Chark fits the Ravens nicely. They like athleticism at the wide receiver position, and DJ Chark brings that. But I could also see him ending up on the Titans or the Vikings, because again, the Titans really do like those big body wide receivers as well. DJ Chark fits that. I think DJ Chark has a lot of untapped potential. And his contract should be relatively cheap. And then we have Allen Lazard. And I think Allen Lazard could also end up on the Titans or the Ravens. Again, that big body type of guy. But he could also end up on the Falcons. I could easily see them going with the Falcons. because the Falcons do like to bring those big body wide receivers as well because they need blocking. They run a run first setup. So they want these really, really elite blocking wide receivers. And I think Lazard fits that bill. So to round it out, I'll sum up all my picks. We got Aaron Rodgers going to the Jets, Lamar Jackson to the Commanders, Jimmy Garoppolo to the Bucks, Jakobi Brissett to the Raiders, Miles Sanders to the Bills, Kareem Hunt to the Broncos, Mattison to the Falcons. We got D-Hop going to the Giants, OBJ to the Cowboys, Jakobi Meyers to the Lions, Juju Smith-Schuster staying with the Chiefs, DJ Chark to the Ravens, and Lazard to the Titans. But let me know what you guys think down below, because realistically they can end up anywhere. There's so many different teams that are vying for quarterbacks and running backs, and it definitely will be interesting to see in the long term where these guys go for the future of their careers and for fantasy football as well. It will be a very interesting offseason to say the least. But anyways, guys, that's going to be it from me. As always, have a good day, a good night, and a good life.